up, freak bitches, wherever you may be, however you may be watching? Probably late since we didn't get a chance to do this one live because YouTube is a piece of shit. I want to say welcome to everybody. Now, I have no idea what was going on with the live stream that we were trying to do, but since we can't do the live stream, we're going to go ahead and pre-record it and put it out later on. Hopefully you guys will come around to watch it. Unfortunately, there won't be any interaction from the chat or Streamlabs or anything like that, but, you know, we may do with what we got sometimes. Sometimes computer gods don't want to agree with us. But it's cool, though, because we can have a pretty good discussion one way or another. And here to have that discussion with me is the Dowager Countess herself, Lady Cora. How are you, ma'am?
I'm great, thank you.
And then, of course, my hetero life mate, the man himself, Grim Tuesday, Jeremy Warner. What's up, buddy?
What's up? All my hair is still attached to my head. I haven't torn it out yet from all this crap that we just went through.
It's sometimes YouTube and the technology just does not want to work. I don't understand why.
And in addition to that, TSS, I tweeted back to him that we're recording. He said Xbox is having issues today, too.
Well, I guess today is just a bad tech day. You know what's funny is
I
I was actually having issues with YouTube earlier today when I was driving around at work. I was trying to play just some music on YouTube, and it kept crapping out on me. So maybe it's a YouTube thing. Who the hell knows? But right now they've got Night Watch Zone is actually doing a live stream, and they don't seem to be having any problems. So I'll be going over to check out the replay of that as soon as we get done. Definitely go check them out as well. They're down in the description below. They do a lot of reviews and stuff just like we do. But today we're having a little bit of a deeper discussion. It is Black History Month, and we've spent the last couple of weeks going over some of our favorite black actors. But now it's time to have a bigger discussion. There is this issue of inclusivity and so on and so forth that's been going on for the last several years now. It's been getting a whole lot of attention in a whole lot of different areas, and now is probably a good time to have a little bit of that discussion. Now, and we'll go ahead and lead off with you, Cora. It is kind of a touchy situation to talk about, but I guarantee that some of my opinions are going to piss somebody off. But, my opinions are just my opinions. They don't have to be yours or anybody else's.
Right.
But, what are some of your thoughts initially on all this?
Well, first of all, I'll say this. I'm upstairs in the kitchen before I came downstairs to do the stuff with you guys. And my husband looks at me and goes, "You look nervous. What's wrong with your face?" I go, "Well, Frank picked a topic which is, very serious. And I want to make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't say and want to be respectful, and so I'm being very conscious of my thoughts and trying to gather my thoughts, and so I still am. But in general, my response to this is, the underrepresented persons, whether you're, LGBTQ women of race or whatnot, if you compare our population, like with census data or such, to the statistics out of Hollywood, with the percentage of people who are leading actors, the people who do behind the scenes directing, the people who have speaking roles, and also within a story itself. I mean, are they stories only about white people? Are they stories about people who are whatever, and they just, cast the part for whoever plays it well? Or are they casting people because the person has to be white? Or is it a show about people who are of a minority group? There's definitely a disparity there. It is not representative of the actual demographics of our country. So I think there is very much a need for this conversation. And it's a touchy subject, yes, but I think there's a need for it. So that's where I'll start, I guess.
Jeremy, any initial thoughts as we kick this whole discussion off?
I don't know why you keep making me follow her when she goes into like a very well thought out explanation, and I'm just like, "Yep, what she said."
Yeah, what she said.
There is a lot to look at. I mean, over the course of, honestly, film's only kind of been around for actually now that it's 2021, probably at least maybe 100 years now, something like that, at least.
Longer than that, I imagine.
Yeah, there's still been cameras and there's been film, but
there was vaudeville, there was live entertainment and such. But even on the stage and in musical performances, there might have been misrepresentation. I mean, look at sports even. I mean, it's a whole different angle, but look how long it took for African American players to be treated as equals, let alone brought into national sports teams. I mean, it's entertainment, and would you consider sports as part of the entertainment umbrella in our culture? But you know what I'm getting at.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
it's
I
just
would.
part of it all. Yeah.
There's entertainment's a multifaceted thing. That could be, like you said, there could be music, it could be video games, it could be sports, movies, like you said, stage shows. It could be anything like that. And yeah, see, my points kind of started at the beginning of it because, again, like I said, there's just a lot, even in the last like 100 some years, of there being actual films. Maybe Hollywood itself wasn't like a thing, but things that have been put out there, even in different, different eras of film that I guess we can, look at. It's kind of funny that like it didn't really happen until recently. I mean, and yeah, I could even say recently as even shit. I could say like the 90s, where I'm from, and I feel old already.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of statistics, generally speaking. I'm a baseball player, so I'm a very statistically driven person. But I do think there are some times where statistics don't exactly tell enough of the story. So, look, becoming a famous person is not just something you go and do. I mean, and Cora had brought up, being an athlete at some point. Think about how many kids play Little League over the course of a year. Think about how many kids play Little League, period, over the course of their youth. Really, your chances of becoming a professional baseball player after playing Little League are literally like, it's like 0.1% of kids that play
like
Little League
winning the
actually
lottery.
play big league. It's
almost
actually
worse.
probably worse than that.
I think it is.
It's like you have a better chance of winning the lottery than you do of actually putting in the work and trying to become a professional baseball player and actually getting there. And even then, after you become a baseball player, the chances of you becoming a Hall of Famer are even greater than that. So the chance of you having successes is horrible compared to the few people that have actually been able to play the sport professionally. So, but I don't know that some of these stats that they throw out there aren't just spin. But
well, I don't know if you saw the thing I saw, but in 2016, the USC Annenberg School of Communication and Journalism put out their very first ever quote, inclusion or invisibility, gender, media diversity, social change initiative report about diversity in entertainment. And there's a lot of hard data that's based on actual research. So there is stuff out there, but I think you're right. There's a lot of stuff that's biased.
Well, one of the things that I've come to not like about really any study over the last several years is that there's been many, many occasions where whatever the study is talking about, they always tend to leave out certain things that might argue against their point they're trying to make or they want to make. So I find it really hard to believe those studies. I mean, I'm not saying the data's wrong, but I'm saying it might be incomplete. And incomplete data is almost as bad as incorrect data. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, in this specific case, I won't go into the stuff behind it, but I hear what you're saying, but you have to start somewhere and then make your own decision about whether you agree with it or not. So yeah, you're right. Things like this can be biased.
And I apparently cannot spell. I spelled Oscar with an I instead of an O. I'm trying to make sure I have some of this stuff in front of me. So, and obviously
gotcha.
we're talking this more about Hollywood than we are anything else. But
yeah.
And, to roll back through some of these things, it's like, let's see, don't forget Hattie McDaniel. I think we were talking about her a while back on the channel at some point. This may have been months and months and months ago. Was the first African-American to win an Academy Award in 1939, which was no small feat because in 1939, I mean, there were still segregated bathrooms and water fountains and that kind of nonsense. So it's not a small thing.
Right.
As far as, they got it broke down by certain awards, but I mean, the first person obviously to win a Best Actor, the first African American to win a Best Actor was 1958 Sidney Poitier. who also went on to win it a few years later in 1963. Since then, there's been, I don't know, I can't possibly count these that fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Exactly 20 African Americans win the Best Actor in a Leading Role Oscar. Now, there has been some time jumps between those two. Paul Winfield won it in 1972, and then it was 1986 before another African American would win that particular award. And then there was kind of a slew of them. You had Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Lawrence Fishburne, Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington multiple times, Will Smith, Jamie Foxx, Don Cheadle, a couple different ones. In a leading role, and this is all just for kind of background. Dorothy Dandridge was the first African American woman to win the Best Actress in a Leading Role in 1954 for her role in Carmen Jones. After that, it was almost 20 years before Diana Ross would be the next African American woman to win a Best Actress. So there are some significant time jumps, and even more recently, there was an 11-year time jump between Diane Carroll and Whoopi Goldberg from 74 to 85 between African American women winning. And then another slew. I mean, Angela Bassett, Halle Berry, Viola Davis, several. The last one being in 2019 for the movie. Cynthia Erivo won it for her role as Harriet Tubman in Harriet. Let's see. Best Supporting Actor, there's been a whole bunch. Most of them, obviously, are, Morgan Freeman, Denzel. Because when you're awesome, and you kind of run away with all the awards you want. And Best Actress in a Supporting Role, there's been several, a lot of big names. I mean, most recently, Regina King, who I love, Mary J. Blige, Octavia Spencer. Let's go back to the younger ones. And honestly, it's been a pretty big time jump from Hattie McDowell. I mean, Hattie McDowell won hers in 1939, and then it was 10 years later that the next African American female won. I'm sorry.
But some of this isn't.
I'm sorry. It was actually 1990 before an African American female won. After Hattie McDowell, there were several nominated. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 6 nominated, but there wasn't another win until 1990, and Whoopi Goldberg did. So I was actually kind of reading that wrong. So
didn't I just say that? Did I just say that? Not till like the fucking 90s. Anything started like.
Oh yeah,
coming around.
I was not reading this complete list. Sidney Poitier was the first one to win in 1963. He was nominated in 58 but didn't win. And there was not another African American that won the Best Actor award until Denzel won it in 1999.
See, for me, it's not so much about.
I'm sorry, 2001 was when he won it. He was nominated in 99, but won in 2001.
It's about casting, and it's about stories and plots being about, minority and underrepresented people, whether it's women or, like, for example, all the TV shows in the 80s and 90s that depict families, they all seem to be middle class, doing well with money, or have a lot of it. But like Roseanne stood out to me because it represented people who didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I connected with that myself, and so I can see how people who feel like race isn't represented fairly. Well, what about the stories about people of I don't know what the correct term is, but African Americans, Black, those families, and those cultures, and those stories need to be heard more. I think they are. I mean, stuff's come out over the years, but I mean, I think that's getting better, but I could give two shits who gets the award. I just think there should be equal representation on the map of what's out there available for content.
But that's the hard part, though, is how do we figure out where the line is for equal?
I think it's just, I don't know that there ever is going to be a line, because Hollywood is always making new shit. Like, look how many, I mean, the number of, this was before COVID, but the number of, quote, scripted shows every year, and reality shows, or not scripted, or say they're not scripted, but they might be, but the number kept climbing. You have streaming services producing new content, you have movie houses, you have TV networks, you have, independent folks doing it. There's so much out there that I don't know that you're ever going to be able to measure, because what about some projects that don't, take off the ground, or they might finish the product, but it doesn't get distributed, or screenplays that never get picked up. I mean, Hollywood's like a fucking, living, breathing being in itself. And it's never, you can take a temperature gauge of where it's at in any moment, but 5 seconds later could be totally different.
And yes, that is my doorbell that just rung. Somebody obviously wants to get shot.
I didn't hear it.
I did.
Either.
I didn't bother to shit at me.
He heard it.
So when you talk about inclusion, it's like, I mean, it has to be an effort across the board on all these different areas of what is, quote, entertainment in Hollywood. And I think it's getting better, but it clearly needs to get better. I was reading some statistics from that 2016 report that said when there's an generally speaking, woman, African American person, or a person who's of a different race or minority or whatever, they're calling them unrepresented persons. So it's the group collectively. If there's a director or a person in charge of casting who is of an underrepresented group, the diversity for the project tends to go from, statistically speaking, 29% if it's a white person who's running the show, and to 49% inclusion if it's someone who's from an underrepresented group that's running it. I mean, that's telling right there for me. And then there were some weird statistics that there are more African American and Latino women that appear on speaking roles than white women, and that was weird to me. I'm not sure about that one, but the statistics are all over the place. But I think there's a point there that if you are someone who feels like you aren't represented fairly in your job, in this case Hollywood, of course you're going to bring in other people so that you give them more of a shot. So I like that. So maybe the answer is Hollywood needs to put more people behind the camera who are African American. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Oh, it's not all black. The statistic went from 29% to 49%. So the other 49% is by default white person. So um I'm just saying, with that one statistic point, that was telling to me. But I don't think that I'm just saying maybe the answer is maybe pushing this for the people who are responsible for casting and trying to promote projects that don't have race specific roles in casting. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like when Annie with Jamie Foxx was first redone, a lot of people said, "Wow, Mr. Daddy Warbucks or Robux, or how do you pronounce his name, can't be black." It's like, what? Why can't he be? I just heard some discussions, but it's like, roles don't have to be, but character roles don't have to be typecasted into the who plays them. That can change. Uh, I just, I just wish there was less focus on, well, traditionally, the person who plays this is this or that, and I don't know. I'm rambling, but the point is, I think the key here is getting behind the camera and getting into the ear of the people who are responsible for casting and financing projects to almost demand a little more consideration for the underrepresented people in Hollywood.
I don't know. I guess if we're trying to talk about this line in the sand, I guess, as it were, and this is a general statement. This is not, this could be for anyone who's black, white. It could be male, female, whatever. We were talking about this line. Where does it become? Where's that Goldilocks zone where it doesn't feel like it's pandering or like it has to be done?
Do you
Because,
think the difference between equality and special treatment?
I guess, because I'm like, something that'll kind of take me at, like, I think that whole problem with that Ghostbusters movie that we all obviously love so much, with all the female cast, I'm like, yeah, I know I'm pushing my own buttons here, where I'm like, this is great, and I mean, I love these women, I really do. They're all hilarious. I love them all to death. But I'm also like, I feel like this is literally just trying to pander, and it's almost like it's kind of overshadowing it. And it took it. I didn't see it, but I'm saying like that would have taken me out of it already because I'm like, I don't like that it feels like we have to do this. I don't know. It felt a little pushy, like too pushy, and not in a bad way. Like, because they're like, hey, look, it's like an all-female cast and like an all-female crew, and I'm like, okay, why are you making such a point about it? It's not like it can't be done and done well. I mean, look at Wonder Woman. It was directed by a woman, and like that movie, it's fucking phenomenal. Obviously, Gal Gadot. I mean, do I have to say any more? Have you seen her? But I mean, her and Patty Jenkins is the director. It works, and she's kicking ass. That's all we have going for DC. So let us have it. Wonder Woman's like the only good thing we have right now.
But maybe sometimes people want to use entertainment as a platform for bringing attention to this inclusion problem. So whoever was behind the financing, the writing, or the casting may have said, this is going to be, a soapbox moment for gender equality in Hollywood.
Well, make no mistake, in Hollywood, I don't think they give two sorts of piss about gender equality as much as they give a shit about money. Because remember, they want to make money.
Agreed, but maybe the people behind the project wanted to utilize this as a moment to do that.
If you have a big enough voice and you're going to put it out there, I think I know what you're trying to say. It's like, if I said something, nobody would probably listen to me. Now, if Morgan Freeman said the same damn thing, then everybody would listen to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're using the project to have a moment. It wasn't like the movie was created because of the moment.
Look, it's one thing if you're making a movie. I mean, like say, what was it? The one movie, not Salem. I think it's Selma. Selma comes out a few years ago. I mean, obviously, you're going to have a predominantly black cast and stuff like that. Now, if you're making a movie about like something happening in Russia, there's not a huge black population in Russia, as far as I know. I don't think there is anyway. Not knowing a whole lot about Russia, never having been there. But I mean, if you're making a movie that's about Russians in Russia, are you going to put a bunch of black actors in there just to satisfy some quota? That's kind of the part that aggravates me. I don't think people understand that there's a little more nuance than that. But that's typecasting a role
for race, though. And that's what we're trying to get away from.
But if there's not a lot of black people in Russia, and I mean, you're gonna make this Russian character a black actor just to satisfy Jada Pinkett? Oscar so white? Remember that joke?
But what if Will Smith or Morgan Freeman or somebody else tried out for the role and they were great at it? So what? Maybe he would have been a kid who was adopted by a Russian family for all we know.
Hold on. Before we're not talking about story. Whatever the story of the particular movie is doesn't matter. But you say something interesting. If Will Smith or Morgan Freeman or somebody who sells the movie wants in on it or is auditioned for it, that's different. Because like I said, they want money more than they want diversity. So if you're going to put somebody in there that's going to sell the movie, great. That's what they want. They don't give a shit about diversity. Right now, the only reason they are giving this any credit at all in Hollywood is because they're afraid it's going to hurt their box office take.
Yeah, they don't want to be boycotted.
That's exactly why. They don't really give a shit who plays who. I wouldn't put... I mean, you know what? There was a movie that came out...
There's nothing wrong with a black person playing the lead in a story about a Russian family.
I didn't say there's anything wrong with it. I say it's wrong when it's forced.
Okay, but if there was an open casting call for a role and different people of races came, you get what I'm getting at.
What's the
I get
role?
what you're saying too, I guess.
It depends on the role. There's a saying
but it shouldn't be that way, though.
Hold on, no, it shouldn't be about color. It should be about character. That's the problem.
Yes, exactly.
There's
performance
something
and ability.
There's something that John Campea says that I love about this. I absolutely swear by what he says. He says the story is not there to serve the character is there to serve the story. The story is the most important thing in a film. One of the things I like to go to is Disney got a lot of shit when Doctor Strange came out because they recast the role of not the chosen one, the immortal one, whatever it was, the one that Tilda Swinton played,
the ancient one.
Yeah, the ancient one. They caught a lot of shit because that role in the comic books is a Tibetan monk, and it was a man, I believe, right? Jeremy, help me out here.
You want to say yes?
Okay, well, they caught a lot of shit for whitewashing because they picked some white British woman with a theater background to play the Ancient One. What they don't talk about, because they're willing to take the bullet for this whole whitewashing thing, what they don't talk about is the whole reason they did that because China didn't want a Tibetan monk being in the movie. Because Tibet and China, there's a whole political thing going on between them that I don't want to go into. They want to market the movie to China because China's a huge market and they can make a bunch of money over there. They didn't give a shit about race. They didn't whitewash them. They didn't change that role over for the movie because they wanted any kind of diversity. They wanted the money.
Well, first of all, fuck China because they don't even like showing movies about time travel because time travel is absurd. I'm like, no fucking shit. You know what entertainment is?
The Avengers isn't absurd. It's like
I wanted to say it. I'm like, doesn't the Endgame have the time travel?
Has anybody actually watched the Avengers? Has anybody actually watched the Avengers and thought to themselves, man, I really think Thor, the God of Thunder, could come down out of the sky and fight Hela or whatever.
Well, it's not just. I mean, yeah, they seem to hate things that are like out of the realm of reality. I'm like, yeah, but can you just not be entertained? Fucking Christ! Yeah, I want Russell Crowe to come out here. Like, are you not entertained?
Yeah, find me a handful of movies that aren't absurd at the base of at the core of them. You know, I mean, that's
imagination.
That's one of the fun things about movies is we kind of live vicariously for a couple hours in this world because we're not actually going to be super spies. I mean, honestly, tell me any of the last, outside the first two Fast and Furious movies weren't completely absurd. There's outside the first two movies, there's nothing grounded about those in the real world.
Agreed.
But seriously, what are we even talking about here? They want money, and honestly, there's so many different groups of people that want a piece of the attention pie that comes from this whole diversity discussion. Like, take for example the whole Scarlett Johansson thing a while back. Do you guys remember this?
I don't know. Tell me.
Scarlett Johansson was cast to play a role of a transgendered man in a movie called Rub and Tug.
Oh yeah.
What?
She caught 10 different kinds of shit for even accepting this role. Now, here's what I don't think they quite understood. Yeah. Here's what I don't think they quite understood. Is you need someone that's going to sell. Now, the business side of it says you need an actor or an actress or a name that is going to sell your product, and your product is the film. So, Scarlett Johansson takes 10 different kinds of hell, and she actually she got in trouble. Even afterwards, she tried to defend herself for it. She actually got in trouble because somebody in Out magazine or one of the LGBT magazines asked her about it, and she said, "Well, go ask this person. Go ask Jared Leto and a couple other people who had played transgender or gay people who weren't actually those kinds of people in real life." And she caught shit for that because she stood up for herself taking the role, and they were bashing on her because she was being so disrespectful and shit. And she eventually ended up backing out of the role and apologizing for something I don't think she should have apologized for. But the reality is who else are you going to put in that? Now, let's say that you put a transgendered actor in that role. I will ask you to give me 2 names of transgendered actors, and I guarantee I know both of them ahead of time.
I'm just saying, yeah.
But give me 2 names. Give me 2 names. Give me 2 transgendered actors who are working right now that just could have been cast in that role because they're transgender. Instead,
though, and I don't want to be disrespectful.
Well, I mean,
I know what you're getting at.
They're fame names because the names that we know them by. I mean, we know who they are. I can tell you the 2 people that the names are recognizable, and one of them I actually wouldn't have minded seeing in the role. But there are 2 people. Give me 2 names. Any 2 names. Give me 2 transgendered actors. Let's say they are half as famous as Scarlett Johansson.
I guess technically now
this is a touchy subject.
But no, this is the subject, though. That's what I'm saying. Is people get so butthurt about this shit. If you're going to now, this story could have been a very positive one. I forget exactly what the plot of it was. Something about some guy who started some shit. I read about the plot a little bit ago and I lost it. But seriously, there are 2 transgendered actors who I could tell you their names and you'll say, okay, fine. One of them is Chaz Bono. I can't imagine that Chaz Bono is going to be the same draw as Scarlett Johansson. I'm sorry. The other one is Laverne Cox. I love Laverne Cox. I unashamedly love Laverne Cox.
The gentleman who's who's transitioned, who's in the show Orange is the New
Yes.
Black.
Yes. As a matter of fact, one of my biggest problems with that show the last couple of years is they really ignored her character. I think her character was by far the most interesting character on the show. And the last 2 or 3 seasons, she wasn't even there. And that really pissed me off. Because she was way more of an interesting character than the blonde girl. Way more. And a better actress to boot, to be absolutely honest. But I mean, past those, give me a name of anybody who's going to draw any attention to that project.
So technically now we could say Elliot Page.
Here's the
Well,
thing,
now,
maybe
yeah.
it's not about that.
Well, but here's the thing, though. If you want to draw attention to your narrative, to the point you're trying to make with this story, don't you
But maybe
think...
that's not what it's about.
But what is it about, then? I mean, because Scarlett Johansson is somebody that openly has supported the LGBT community. Openly has raised money for charities, for AIDS charities, anti-bullying charities. She has openly been out there many, many times over many, many years trying to support this cause and the message that these people are trying to put out. So she takes this role thinking, I'm going to be a part of putting out this message that I think is important. And instantly, the same group that she's trying to champion starts shitting on her.
Well, it's a
You
double-edged
can't please
sword.
everybody.
Here's the thing. Casting should be about casting. It shouldn't be about... But there is some merit to the fact that, maybe a story or a project doesn't need some, quote, famous person or actor. And needs somebody who can understand the role better because of their life experience. You've seen cases of people... Excuse me, I'm burping. Who have had... like previous injuries, people who are in a wheelchair, people who are ex-veterans, who actually go into acting and play those type of roles because of their experience.
I don't think that not having that experience doesn't mean that you don't understand the role. That's my problem.
Oh, I think that's absolutely wrong when it comes to transgender. Being transgender is something that only people who are transgender can understand.
I don't imagine that Scarlett Johansson, and I'll go back to this as an example. I don't imagine that Scarlett Johansson isn't the kind of actor that doesn't want to investigate and understand that role before jumping in front of a camera. I would imagine that most actors, especially the method actors, and there's still a few out there, and I would imagine that Scarlett Johansson is one of these people that would have put the research into this before she even stepped in front of a frame or camera for 1 second. Would have gone and talked to people and said, hey, I'm doing this story, give me some insight so that I can play this character as accurately as I can. Because I don't think that somebody has to be...
It shouldn't be off the table because she isn't transgender, but they shouldn't take it off the table to consider people who are transgender to want to try out for the role.
But did they consider anybody transgender?
I don't know. I'm just saying in general behind the scenes, I think there should be a level of inclusion in casting and consideration when it comes to writing for the characters and in casting for the characters. Okay,
well, I don't think that anybody knows because I don't think anybody cares. I don't think it fits the narrative. That's why I don't think it's ever reported on. Maybe they did call Chaz Bono. Maybe they did call Laverne Cox and say, "Hey, are you interested in this?" They turned it down. I don't know that for sure. Maybe they did. But I mean, don't you think that they actually because casting people in Hollywood are pretty fucking smart these days. I always tell people that casting is the one thing that never gets enough credit in Hollywood. But
agreed.
But
that's where the pressure needs to lie. In making changes in casting and character development in the writing process.
But you can't blame the casting director or the people who cast movies for the way a character is written or what color they're written as.
I'm not blaming them. I'm saying the pressure should be put on the people who tell the casting people what they're looking for.
Well, that's ultimately the writers. The writers write stories.
It should be on the writers. That's what I'm trying to say. Is it should be in the development of the characters in writing.
But that's something else, though, is nobody's stopping people from developing these stories.
But they need to be actually... I think there needs to be more equality in the percentage of projects that are... You get what I'm getting at. It needs to be more financing, more distribution equality. It shouldn't... And counting Crazy Rich Asians as a diversity movie doesn't count. It was a book that they turned into a movie, and it wasn't some individual project. And just like some of these other projects, that, like the Ghostbusters movie, it has all women in it. There just needs to be more, in my opinion, less whitewashing.
But that's what I was saying with the whole Doctor Strange thing, though. is a lot of times it's not whitewashing. It's them wanting to make money. I mean, you know, one of the things that nobody talks about is the role of Nick Cage not Nick Cage, of Nick Fury in the MCU. Originally for, 20, 30 years, Jeremy was a white guy in the comics. As a matter of fact, Nick Fury was played by David Hasselhoff in some weird and Marvel thing that was done on TV back in the, early mid-90s, something like that. But when they came out with the newer run of the comic books, they modeled that character on Samuel L. Jackson, and it just so happened to work out that way.
Great actor.
A great actor. Well with it. A great actor, but, I mean, nobody cared that role was changed for color.
It shouldn't matter what the historical race of the role was in previous projects or what it was meant for in writing. It should just be about the best person for the job, independent of their race.
Well, then,
or their sexual identification.
Then why is it so important that for this undefined character, whether he's black, white, or whatever is not mentioned, that we push African American or people of color or transgender or gay or whatever into these roles?
We shouldn't. It should be about the best person for the role.
But maybe the best person for the role is a white person.
Then it should be that person.
That's the crux of my argument, though.
I agree with you on that, but I just feel like I agree with you there.
I mean, because I think
there shouldn't be backlash when there's a role and a white person gets cast.
Because I think that Tom Hanks is a fantastic actor. I don't think that you should cast Tom Hanks to play Martin Luther King. Let me clarify that. But I mean, because there are plenty of African American actors out there that can do this. Several that have over the last 10 or 12 or 15 years. But if you have a character that is just a character that is undefined as far as those traits are concerned, why do we need to just run to a certain color? That kind of goes against.
You shouldn't.
That kind of goes against equality.
That's not equality. That's kind of what the girls and I were speaking of. That's I'm very careful with my words here. That's pushing the line too far. That's like finding equality and then pushing for more, and then there's backlash. And you have it's like you have to find the happy middle. But our culture right now is all about being divisive and pushing the line and driving your own agenda and not giving a shit about other people's. That is just, it's divisive. That's what America is right now. It's in Hollywood and politics and everyday life, and that's where we are. And Hollywood's just a perfect exemplification of exactly where we fucking are.
Jeremy, do you have any thoughts before I start running over anything else that you might have to say?
Like I said, I'm just letting mommy and daddy fight. Right
the irony is that me and Cora actually see eye to eye on a lot of this stuff. We just take different paths to get there.
That's fine.
Perhaps.
I'm looking at
I'm looking at trying to look something up because I'm like, I grew up watching Justice League, the animated series, whatever, the cartoon one, and the Green Lantern was a black guy. I don't know. I just grew up with that, and then I was like, wait, that's not. Well, then I learned, okay, there's different Lantern Corps.
There's actually been several Green Lanterns on Earth.
But yes, there have been different. His name was John Stewart. That's the black guy, and then there's Hal Jordan, as we all know. Also got shot in the head. Well, Barry Reynolds got shot in the head by Deadpool, so that didn't happen. But I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Like, that's just funny. That's what I thought Green Lantern actually was. I just thought it was kind of cool. He's a cool character. I don't know. I was lost in trying to look that up. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm reading this article from Forbes magazine. It's one of the articles that I pulled up to do some research on. It said this report that they cite in the thing, and I'll put a link to this down in the description below, says this report details that leading and co-leading characters for ethnic groups increased from 27 films in 2018 to 32 films in 2019. However, underrepresented characters made up less than 35% of total characters. 15 films had no speaking black parts, 44 had no speaking Latino characters, 36 films had no speaking roles for Asian characters. My question is, what are the movies? I mean, I
don't think that matters.
Well, I think it does matter because, like I said, if the movie is about if you're talking about a bunch of Mormons, living in some camp in Utah, that's a predominantly white kind of thing you're going to find.
That's the perspective there. Why can't we adjust our perspective so it doesn't fucking matter?
Because the perspective is inaccurate.
it doesn't. I'm going to disagree with you hard on this. It doesn't matter.
Well, if I'm making a crime movie about an FBI agent going in to break up a KKK cell in Alabama, there's not a whole lot of black people in the KKK.
Okay, I'll say there's an exception here.
Well, I mean, I think
historical accuracy. If you're talking about things of like you brought up Martin Luther King, if you're doing a biopic about him, and of course you're going to try to stay true to his race and such. And if you're talking about historical things like the KKK, yeah, I get that. But if it's just a generic movie about some chick who fell in love with a guy, they go to his best friend's wedding in Denver, and they end up in some crazy, like weird situation, and the plot twists and all that, and she goes home single. It doesn't matter in any way what race any of those characters are, in my opinion.
I mean, that sounds like every story I've ever heard ever, though. That's a pretty... You could get anyone to fill that role, and it doesn't matter what it is. That's what you're saying. But
I think there's a distinction between historically accurate depictions and fiction.
What he's saying is, like, if there's something that's obviously a specific demographic of people that are involved in this story, well, then, yeah, it should be that way, or it's going to have to be a certain way, because that's how it is.
Maybe, but maybe not. It depends on who's writing it and who's casting it and the project itself. I mean, there needs to be room for acceptance that some Mormon people can be played by people of different races. And it doesn't matter if most people in Utah are generally white.
That's not saying there isn't. Yeah, that's a generic, just saying, hey, this is a Mormon person. I'm like, well, that could be fucking anybody, because that's...
But if you're talking about like a biopic project about the founder of the Mormon church who was white, John Smith, you're going to probably want somebody who's Caucasian for that role.
But then for the role, yes. But if he dealt with mostly white Americans and didn't know a lot of black people, you're going to change the color of the people. Yeah, you can
change it. For him, I would be, but I don't think it affects the rest of it. Maybe I sound like a hippie here, but... Well,
do you change the color of his wife? Just to add...
Sure, why not?
Well, because it's historically inaccurate.
I'm just... It's a wavy line. I'll just shut up.
Well, all I'm saying is that it's supposed to be about the story. It's not supposed to be about the characters. And I don't understand why people can't put that first. There is this movement to, and I've talked about it a couple of times on Drew's show about the labels. Everybody wants a label attached to their ass now. And now nobody's happy unless they belong to 4 or 5 different groups that are labeled. If you go look at a movie like... and I haven't seen this yet. I need to see it because everybody said it was really good. There's a movie called Loving that came out back in 2016, starring Joel Edgerton and Ruth. Wow, if I mispronounced that name, I'd be in trouble. It's Negga, who played the.
Moving on.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that name because right now that might go wrong. But it's based on a true story about a couple in the 1967. Who actually got involved in a court case in Virginia Beach because it was a white man who married a black woman, and they were trying to... I think the story... Let me read it real quick. A couple whose arrest for interracial marriage in 1960s Virginia began a legal battle that would end up in the Supreme Court in a historic 1967 decision. Now, that cast is... Let's see... Just looking at it... Oh, it's kind of hard to tell because some of these photos are black and white. I don't know why modern-day actors and actresses would have black and white photos. But it seems like most of this cast, well, maybe not most, more than half, is white. Given the subject matter, I mean, is it a big deal to not have more African Americans in this movie than to have white Americans or white actors?
I don't know. I think you have a point, but I just think that there should be a priority to not require such consideration when it's not necessary.
But part of the problem is that you got so many of these groups out there saying it's necessary, even when it's not necessary.
Well, that's bigotry to me. That's old thinking. That's not progressive or inclusive.
Well,
that's not even coming to the line of equal treatment or equality. That's like still being past the line on the wrong side.
Well, the reality is nobody wants equal treatment. They want superiority. That's what equality has turned into now. It's superiority.
Not necessarily. There are extreme groups, but I don't think everybody. I'm somebody who wants equality, but not dominance as a woman, or for people for race relations. I want true equality.
But all the people who are standing in front of microphones aren't talking about equality. Average everyday people walking around like you and me
generalizing.
Well, I mean, these are the people that are out in the microphones in front of cameras, though.
But
these are the people that are driving this narrative. Well, those are the people that are getting TV time.
That's what I've always noticed.
Maybe that's part of what should change.
I've always said this. There are always people that are the loudest voice in the room, and sometimes they're the most toxic people that are maybe going too far. They're the extremists in a lot of things, and sometimes those people, like I said, it gets a little twisted, and your message doesn't really mean shit anymore because now those are the people that they're listening to because, again, they're the loudest voice. And it kind of ruins it for you, and then it kind of just doesn't really. It becomes a joke almost.
You know but truthfully, there's a silent majority of people who don't feel that way as the people who.
Oh, I know, but you're never going to hear them. Yeah, that's the problem. Is you're never going to hear them. Because
the problem is they're the silent majority.
They can't, like you just said it. They can't talk.
But maybe that's something that should change.
But what changes though?
That should change.
But what can change?
You're going to
have to damage control and do a lot of backpedaling to get out of whatever this hole this person dug you into.
You make it sound so bleak and undoable, but it could. Progressive changes are happening, and it can work out. It's not dire.
No. I'm just saying there are certain things now that are just. It's almost like it doesn't even mean what it means anymore because of someone taking it either too far or to the wrong direction, where all the rest of the people are looking at them like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "We don't know this person." Like they're trying to be like, "Yeah, fuck this person." They're kind of giving our movement or our message, whatever it may be, kind of the wrong light or the wrong idea.
We need to have more hope and actual action happen, but we also need to define what equality is and what that means, and when we reach it, stop pushing for more.
That's the dangerous part. There are groups out there that just won't stop pushing.
Agreed. Same thing with women's rights and progression.
Well, I mean, there's groups like that everywhere. On either side of an aisle, there's groups like that all over the place. But
in Hollywood, there is. I think it'll level out. In all honesty, I think it will level out in Hollywood. I don't know when, but I think it will.
I think it'll level out as soon as there's no money in it for Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Hollywood's about one thing. And Hollywood doesn't see color.
But here's the beautiful part about Hollywood. Hollywood, you say, is driven by money, and you're right. Well, what if everyday people, the silent majority, stopped watching the shit that wasn't at least trying for equality? That's what streaming services are for. The data is readily available, what people are watching, how much and when and who. All this data is going to be tabulated and used in consideration for marketing and future project funding. I mean, all the people like you and I have to do is pick and choose what we watch.
That's why they go after names.
And refuse to watch
because people are going to go watch names. You put the Rock in anything on movies going to make $500 million.
Well, that
it's true.
But I'm saying the answer is with our viewership, what our choices are that we watch. That's how we will make changes, a silent majority.
I think ideally it would. I don't see it working like that. People will go see movies because they're conditioned to. Look at the last 3 or 4, again, the Fast and Furious movies. The last 3 or 4 of those movies have been terrible. They've just not been good.
But I haven't seen them.
But those movies still made $1 billion each. Because we're conditioned to go see The Rock. We're conditioned to go see Vin Diesel. We're conditioned to go see these one-dimensional action films. That's why those movies make money. That's why they keep making them.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's as dire and, like, I have hope. I think it'll take a long time, but, excuse me, I think there is hope.
Well, you say something interesting there. It takes a long time. Significant changes usually take a long time.
Yes, generational changes.
I think part of the problem is that they want these things to change on a dime. That's not how significant change happens.
And I think as a woman who's almost 40 is, acting like an old lady here, that's a younger generation issue because they're used to this age of on-demand everything. When I was growing up and I wanted to look up a book, I had to go through, go to that little wood thing with all the drawers, and
yeah.
I had to understand systems and math I couldn't do with a cell phone. When I had to make a phone call, I had to go to an actual phone, pay phone or landline in a house, whatever. I mean, the on-demand culture change is just shifted this younger generation's idea of wanting things now. You got to work through shit. I mean, it takes time. You can't, and that they're going to have to learn the hard way. And that's just how it is. I mean, it's like the people who are mad. I'm not going to say much more than this, but you can't count all the mail-in votes like in real time for the short amount of 12 hours that people are allowed to vote in person.
That's a different thing, though.
To do something.
I don't think that's a good analogy. I think that's a different thing.
Okay, then maybe I'm sorry. The point is, you can't do a big project in a small amount of time if it's not feasible. You can't make progressive social change in the culture of Hollywood in 2 years. It's going to take 20 years to get down to all the levels of behind the scene decision making and judgment calls and expectations and unspoken rules and such. It's just going to take, I think it'll take another 18 years.
To be fair, they didn't really have the internet or anything like that during the civil rights movement. And then, I mean, rightfully so, they were kind of like, hey, this shit needs change. It needs change right now. I mean, so it's not necessarily, I get what you're saying, and I'm not even still really in that group either. I'm like, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have shit like that either. Maybe I'm just, I guess, starting to get onto the old side too, where I'm just kind of like, yeah, it ain't going to happen right the hell now,
Well, part of my problem is how much they're trying to force this, and I think me and Jeremy have talked about it maybe off air a couple of times. When Star Wars The Force Awakens came out, there was this huge movement to try to make Poe and Finn a gay couple. And I was like, how does that serve the story? I mean, if they would have established them as gay from the onset of the first movie, I wouldn't have cared much. I mean, it probably wouldn't have affected anything in the story anyway.
Yeah, fine, whatever.
But I don't understand why after the movie comes out and is successful, because it had Star Wars in the title, that they were like, oh, we should totally rearrange these characters to where they are gay and re-examine or completely redefine who they are. And I was why would you do that?
Right.
All for inclusion?
Now it's like, now we have to have that. Well, remember, they got in trouble. Was it the last one? I think, The Rise of Skywalker. Like, I can't remember where it was at, like what country. They wouldn't, either they cut the scene out, and it's like, it's so quick.
Of the two girls kissing at the end.
The lady that, I think she was in at least the second one. I don't know if she was in the first, and Force Awakens, probably not. But like, you just saw this woman, and then I'm like, okay, she's just kind of like a side character, just giving exposition and crap like that. But like at the end, when they're all celebrating and whatnot, very quickly you see her kiss another woman. I'm like, oh, okay. I just kind of went, okay, cool. Everyone's happy now.
I didn't understand the outrage over that scene. For one, it was kind of nonchalant. It wasn't overbearing. It wasn't overdone. It didn't affect at all the story itself. I was like, whatever. Little scenes like that don't bother me. I remember when Star Trek, the second one came out? They had actually made the Sulu character gay. They don't show him kissing another man, but when they get to one of these star bases that they're at some point early in the movie, he actually walks off and then meets up his husband and their adopted daughter. And like, people were freaking out about that. Ironically enough, even George Takei didn't like that scene, and I was like, why? It's very understated. It makes very clear that in this future world where tolerance is the norm, that these two guys can just walk down the street holding hands with their adopted daughter, and it's just part of the background, that it's been totally accepted. I think that's kind of the way to display what you want. But everybody got shitty with that scene, and even George Takei didn't like it. And I'm like, well, that's what we're going for, right? It's like they're trying to pay homage to George Takei a little bit with the scene anyway by making the Sulu character gay, but it's very I thought it was done really classy, and I was like, okay, that's a good scene for me. That works. It's a good scene emotionally for his character and me getting involved emotionally in his character. Not that I wasn't already by the time the second movie rolls around, or by the fact that I've been a Star Trek fan all my life anyway. But I thought that was done very classy. It wasn't forced. There's so much shit that's forced. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. We were watching this 911 Lone Star show. And I was saying that I like everything about the show, except for the relationship between the fireman and the police officer, these two gay guys. It seems really, really forced. It's like they push a lot of this relationship in there when it doesn't really need to be. It doesn't take away the show for me that much, but I'm like, when I'm getting into the story of the show, it all of a sudden runs to this, it takes 5 minutes to run to this kind of like stupid soap opera drama going on between these two guys, and I'm like, it kind of takes me out of it when you force it onto me. I don't care if they're gay. I actually like the characters just fine. But when you make me sit there and digest this 2 or 3 minute scene of them going through whatever their specific tribulations are, going through kind of the typical stuff that gay couples go through anymore, it's like, you kind of take me away from the show a little bit. It kind of breaks the stride of the show.
Where I agree with you?
Yeah.
So, I don't remember which Star Wars movie it was. It might have been the last one, Episode 9, I think. I don't know. But I remember hearing about in an article that editors purposely had to cut out runtime. So they cut scenes where the Emperor was interacting with some of the main characters to include more time for the Asian female characters just walking around talking about stuff that had nothing to do with the plot.
That sounds like something Lucasfilm and Disney would do.
If that's true, that I remember being mad as a Star Wars fan, going like, why he only had limited scenes as it is. The actual actor came back. I mean, they're going to skip out on fucking Star Wars Gold having more minutes in the movie with the Emperor to show a 20-year-old girl who happens to be of Asian descent talking about walking across a thing and getting an animal.
Yeah.
I just was flabbergasted by that. So for me, that bothered me. If she had been cast as the fucking Emperor, I wouldn't have fucking cared. For me, it was just about the character, the Emperor. I think you get my meaning.
That sounds exactly. Well, remember, this is the exact same Disney I was talking about earlier that recast the Tibetan monk to satisfy China. I mean, Disney is all about pandering.
Why do we want to hear about her talking about getting horses for them to use to get up to this one thing instead of having 3 more minutes of like actual interaction with the Emperor and main characters? That bugs me. Things like that piss me off. I don't care about the casting, but don't prioritize screen time.
But that's one of the examples that makes the inclusion look bad.
It does.
I don't have any problem with inclusion, but again, when you force it and you make a good movie not so good because you are forcing this inclusion, that to me does more to negatively impact your brand than to have put a white person in this role instead of a black person. That does more to me. Now, the Star Wars movies, the last couple anyway, had kind of a whole slew of problems. I don't know that any more time with Palpatine would have made those movies better, but I get what you're saying.
It's more about editing for me than casting in a situation like that. It's especially when it's something like the last thing of Star Wars ever, I don't know.
Well,
it would have been different to have been earlier.
There's going to be more Star Wars.
Not like that.
Yeah, I don't know when we're going to see more episodic stuff, but yeah, there's going to be more Star Wars.
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of burns me up is, after this whole George Floyd thing, when he was killed by those terrible police officers, it seemed like, this one article I've got from ABC News says, as Hollywood searches for a response to the reckoning brought on by the death of George Floyd. I was like, why does that have anything to do with it? Terrible as the situation as that was, as terrible as the situation as that was, and as much as I absolutely think that those cops need to go to prison for the rest of their lives and hell for eternity after that, how is that supposed to affect?
Cops, by the way, not all the cops. Some of the cops were new on the job that day.
Yeah, but they didn't try to
and
stop
were
him either.
freaked out.
That's kind of a whole different discussion, though.
I think we all understand sitting on someone's neck with your knee is a little bit too much.
And that guy,
it's a bit
was
too much.
about, they knew each other, and that was about. And he had a vendetta against George Floyd. That's very clear.
Here's something I found interesting about the reporting of all this, though. I've got these two articles. The one that I quoted earlier from Forbes, and then this one from ABC News, and I think they both came out about the same time. I don't have the dates written on these. The one from Forbes goes on and on and on about how not nearly enough is being done, yada, yada, yada. This one from ABC News says, in the second paragraph, in the most popular films of 2019, protagonists were more diverse than ever. So now we're getting two different things here from all these people that say that we're not doing enough. But it says, and there were more women behind the camera, but in many other areas, speaking roles, behind the scene jobs, representation, blah blah blah. That's when they kind of go off on the same thing. And my notes kind of stop there, but I do have some other articles to look at.
You're never gonna actually like I said. I mean, I'm sorry if I do sound like a pessimist, or I don't know. I kind of see it as just being real. Like, you're never going to actually, and this is something I learned from video games. You're never actually going to fucking please everybody. If you fucking sit here and actually give, so say you give somebody more of what they want, like, okay, we want more inclusion of this. You do that, and then it's like, okay, well, what about this though of it? Like, there's more than just that. It's like, all right, fine, I'll do this. And then you're like, well, now you're not doing this right. It's like, there's always another little fucking door that opens up after you fucking do that.
Well, there's always going to be a hater.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same anymore. I know, and that's what I've always said. There's two people that you do what you do for. You do it for your fans, and you do it for your haters. Do what you do, because you're gonna make both of them their existence of either loving what you do or hating what you do. You're just gonna make their fucking days. Trust me.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm just gonna shrug and say, well, you don't like it, man. No one's making you watch it. It's not like Clockwork Orange or fucking some Robot Chicken. No one strapped you down to a chair and made you fucking watch this shit. You can literally just walk the other fucking way, you know?
There's so much content out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, let me do me, and the people who enjoy me doing that, like no, that's a different subject. Like, there's just, I'm like, just why can't we just do what we want to do for people that love what we do?
Yeah.
That should be what it's about, but it all gets kind of lost in all this nonsense of trying to push something that is probably going to happen naturally, and that is happening naturally anyway. I mean, honestly, what is it? James Bond, Idris Elba, has been a name that's been thrown out there for the last, 2 years at least, about potentially being James Bond. I'd fucking love to see Idris Elba play James Bond. That's just me, though.
That would be dope. I love it.
And I have not really heard anybody say, oh, but can you have a black James Bond? I remember when Daniel Craig was signed to play James Bond at first. They were like, can you have a blonde person play James Bond? That was like, yeah.
I remember that, too.
Yeah, it's like...
And
they were making fun of his thighs.
Yeah, that's
he's British. He can act. Give him a shot, I guess. Why does it care what his hair color is?
Yeah,
and he was too short. Remember that, Frank? Too short.
Oh yeah, I think I remember that one.
Sylvester Stallone is short. And would you fuck with Rocky or goddamn Rambo? No, the fuck you would not. You're gonna wake up with a fucking knife in your damn throat. Like,
yeah,
no.
It's just such a silly look. All these, for one, I mean, all these people in Hollywood trying to act like they're so was a social justice warrior about this. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga is offering a $500,000 reward after her dog was lost. But yeah,
hey, that story. The guy got shot in the chest. Frank, it's a little. That guy got shot in the chest 4 times.
I was talking about a lost dog. What are you talking about?
No, the same thing. Her dog walker was walking. A car came up, shot her dog walker 4 times in the chest. The guy almost bled out in the street. Then he hung onto one of the dogs while the guy who shot him took 2 of the dogs and drove away.
You see,
somebody's called John Wick right now.
There is some psycho walking around L.A. shooting people to take their famous people's dog walkers to take their dogs, and we're sitting here bullshit about this nonsense.
I'm just saying, somebody's in the hospital fighting for their life right now.
That's what I'm saying. Is there's perspective that needs to be considered here. It's like we're also. I mean, so many people out there are so worried about putting a black guy in a traditionally white role, but meanwhile, there's somebody walking around LA shooting people and taking dogs.
People can't pay their rent.
Yeah.
And people can't even watch streaming service because they don't have the money to pay for it.
Yeah, we just hit the 500,000 death mark in COVID. We just, there's still this whole pandemic thing going on. But by all means, let's worry about whether this actor is black or white in a role that doesn't really matter if you're either. It's like, look, like I said, go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's fine. Because when we were talking about that, I'm like, well, maybe just me. I didn't really hear any aversion to this either. When the next person to play the Doctor in Doctor Who came up, and it was a woman, I was just kind of like, cool, all right, let's fucking go.
After about it, I mean, were people upset?
I don't really recall anything ever being negative about it. Because I mean, he does. I mean, I know Matt Smith even did it when he became the Doctor. He was looking at his hair. He's like, oh my god, I'm a girl. Wait, he feels his throat. He's like, oh wait, no, never mind. And I'm like, it just plays off really funny, and maybe that's why, because it's kind of a humorous show at times. I don't know. I never really remember anybody making a big deal about it. I'm just kind of like,
I thought I had read a lot of stuff where they were criticizing her for being the worst Doctor Who. I don't watch the show, so I don't really know. But I thought
I could disagree with that. I can tell you about the movie in the '90s that was fucking worse. Don't at me.
I'm not a Doctor Who fan, so I'm quoting some headlines that I saw. So I don't know anything about it.
There's a reason there's that gap there between the old Who, there's that movie that we don't talk about, and then where we're at now with 9, 10, 11, 12, now 13.
Yeah, I have no dog in the Doctor Who fight, so don't get in the comments and yell at me. That's just
some guy calls himself a doctor who time travels using a blue phone booth. That's all I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Madman with a box. It's bigger on the inside.
Listen, I think we've pretty much attacked this for all we can attack it for, especially considering that we don't really have any chat interaction right now because YouTube is being a dick.
Talking to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. But look, I mean, bottom line, as I've said it before, and I believe this statement wholeheartedly, it's characters are there to, characters are there to serve the story. The story is not there to serve the character. You need, I mean, that's. You
mean the actor and their agenda.
Character.
Okay.
Character. When I say character, I mean that gender, race, and stuff is irrelevant. It's all about the character, because the character can be different from one movie to the next, but the character serves the story overall. So the important part is, what is the story about? Like I said, if you're making a biopic about Martin Luther King, you don't put Tom Hanks in there. It's kind of a no-brainer. It makes sense. But if it is just a character that is a strong character, go find a strong person. Don't worry about race.
Is this kind of the same thing we just talked about last week when I mentioned Billy D. Williams? He was playing Harvey Dent, and then they had was it James Earl Jones? Oh my God,
Tommy Lee
Jones, the other Jones. You know, fuck it. Hey, I want to see James Earl Jones do it too. Fuck it.
You know what? You know what? Oddly enough, I don't think there was any backlash for them taking the black guy and making him a white guy. I don't remember anybody being pissed about that.
I didn't really care either.
It's usually the other way around.
I actually think that maybe it didn't make news because I know they bought Billy D. Williams out and gave him a ton of money to go away. So maybe he didn't care. He's like, yeah, but they're going to pay me $1 million to not be in a movie. Cheers.
Right. I was in Star Wars. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of money for Colt 45.
Rule number 2: never forget rule number 1.
Yep, damn right.
Hell yeah.
But look, I mean, I think we've kind of beaten this thing to death. But I mean, look, it is what it is. Just cast the proper actor for the character that you want them to portray.